The mornings in the village of Novel were soft and unhurried. Time moved like the slow roll of mist over the hills, quiet, steady, without warning. Rocco was a stray, but not forgotten. Every day he wandered the cobbled streets, his dusty brown coat warmed by the low sun, his steps familiar to everyone. Children called his name and shared crumbs from their pastries. Bakers left him scraps near the back doors. He never begged. He waited, politely, just close enough to be noticed, just far enough not to intrude. He slept in a hollow beneath the old willow tree by the church. The roots made a small den, hidden from wind and rain. From there, he watched the village move. Carriages rumbling by, cats darting across fences, old men arguing about football. A few streets away, inside a yellow house with peeling paint and rose vines on the window, lived Luma. She was a pearl-faced cockatiel with a yellow crest and gray-speckled wings. Her cage sat near the window, always open. She rarely flew far. Instead, she'd perch on the curtain rod or the old woman's shoulder, the woman who sang to her every morning in a trembling voice. Luma loved the light. She'd turn her head toward it, blinking slowly, wings slightly lifted as if to embrace the sun. She mimicked the doorbell. She whistled along with the kettle. Her world was small, but it was filled with music. From the willow tree, Rocco could see Luma's window. Sometimes when the breeze was right, her chirps floated through the air like fragments of a lullaby. He listened. It soothed him. The seasons changed in quiet brushstrokes. Leaves turned to gold. The bread smelled stronger. The old woman moved slower. Then, one morning, something changed. The market was quieter. Radios crackled with strange voices. Trucks rumbled through the village. Not the usual ones, but darker, louder. Men in uniforms, posters with symbols that didn't belong. Rocco noticed first. He stood still near the bakery, ears perked, tail stiff. Luma fluttered her wings more often, agitated, calling out into nothing. The old woman stopped singing. Rumors filled the square like smoke, that a city nearby had fallen, that soldiers were approaching, that families should pack and leave. But the people in Novel had seen fear before. They believed in distance, in borders, in the myth that tragedy respected boundaries. So they stayed, some out of hope, others out of disbelief. On the fourth night, Rocco didn't return to the willow. He had followed a sound, not a voice, not a vehicle, something else. A vibration in the air, like thunder waiting to strike. He slept under a bench in the alley that night, eyes open, limbs tense. Luma didn't sleep either. She refused to perch. She hopped from curtain to chair to shelf, peering out the window again and again. Her tiny heart drummed against her ribs like wings in a cage. That was the last peaceful night Novel would ever know. It began at dawn. The light rose blood orange over the hills. Then came the sound, a single hollow whine that grew louder, deeper, and then impact. The bakery exploded first, then the school. Windows shattered like screams. Dust devoured the streets. The willow tree splintered into fire and ash. People ran. Children cried. Dogs howled. In the chaos, Rocco emerged from the alley, barking, weaving through flames and rubble, dodging falling bricks. He didn't understand the cause, only the danger. He moved toward the yellow house. Inside, Luma was shrieking. The old woman lay unconscious on the floor, blood on her forehead. The cage had fallen, bent and broken. The window was cracked open. Luma's wings trembled. And then, as the roof began to groan under the weight of destruction, she leapt. Through the window, into the smoke, into the sky. She didn't fly far. The blast had stunned her. One wing faltered. She tumbled downward, falling fast toward the street. Rocco was there. She landed near his feet, dazed. He nosed her gently, sniffing for life. She blinked, weak but alive. Another explosion ripped through the town hall. Screams echoed. Sirens started. Rocco looked at her, then at the road, then at the horizon, and without a sound, he turned and ran, not away, but forward. Luma fluttered once, twice, then, clumsily, she lifted and followed, landing lightly on his back. Together, they disappeared into the dust, into a world collapsing behind them, into the unknown ahead. The earth didn't stop shaking. Even as the village faded into the smoke behind them, the sounds lingered, the thunder of crumbling walls, the cries of mothers who couldn't find their children, the sirens that seemed to wail from the sky itself. Rocco didn't look back. His paws hit the cracked asphalt with practiced rhythm, lungs burning as he weaved through the outskirts of Novel. Behind him, perched awkwardly between his shoulder blades, Luma clung to his fur, claws digging in just enough to stay upright. She was quiet now, not a chirp, not a flutter. Her world had collapsed in a matter of seconds. The warmth of her cage, the voice that once sang her awake, the old woman's fragile hand. All gone. And below her, the back of a stray dog, her only connection to anything familiar. The first day, they ran. Fields blurred past, golden wheat trampled underfoot, fences broken, silence thick and unnatural. Rocco didn't know where he was going. He followed instinct and something else, the deep animal sense that danger came from behind and that ahead might hold something different. Not safe, perhaps, but less cruel. That night, they found an abandoned barn on the edge of a forest. Rocco nosed open the broken door and collapsed onto the hay. Luma fluttered off his back and perched on the edge of a wooden beam. Her wings drooped. Her feathers, usually pristine, were darkened with ash. Neither of them slept. Through a crack in the boards, moonlight spilled across Rocco's body. Scars, old and new, painted his skin beneath the fur. His breathing slowed. For the first time since the explosion, he whimpered. A soft, pitiful sound, barely a sound at all. But Luma heard it, and she inched closer. She didn't understand grief in the way humans did, but she felt the heaviness, the hollow ache, the weight of what had been lost. So she sang. Quietly, brokenly, a warbled imitation of the old woman's morning melody. Rocco's ear twitched, and for a moment, something inside him calmed. The days blurred into each other. Every morning, Rocco woke before the light touched the trees. He would sniff the air, listen, calculate. Luma watched him, learning. She flew only short distances now, conserving energy, always returning to him. They became a moving shadow, slipping through forests, crouching behind train stations, crossing frozen rivers at night. Twice they came close to being caught. Once, they reached a village checkpoint. Soldiers stood in mud-stained uniforms, barking orders. Refugees lined the road, faces gray with exhaustion. Rocco tried to blend in, but the moment a soldier spotted Luma on his back, everything changed. "Stop! That bird! Catch it!" Luma bolted upward. A net flew through the air, missing her by inches. Rocco darted beneath carts and legs, his heart hammering. They regrouped a mile away, panting, wild-eyed. She landed shakily beside him, and he nudged her, his nose cold against her feathers. They understood each other now, not through language, but through survival. Winter came early. The trees shed their leaves like old wounds. The rivers thickened with ice. Food grew scarce. One evening, Rocco dug through a collapsed farmhouse. The floorboards groaned beneath his weight. Inside, he found a pantry, broken jars, flour turned to dust. But beneath a blanket, a miracle, canned meat. 2 full tins. He carried one in his mouth. Luma chirped in delight and tapped the lid with her beak. It took them hours to open it, working together. Rocco used his teeth. Luma pecked at the edges. When it finally gave way, they feasted like kings. That night, they huddled together beneath a collapsed roof. Snow fell through the holes above them, soft and silent. Luma tucked her head beneath her wing. Rocco curled around her, protecting her from the cold. And still, the world burned somewhere behind them. Days later, they reached a river border. On the other side, peace, refuge. A different language, but no bombs, no uniforms, no broken homes. But between them and the far bank was a bridge, guarded, too dangerous. Instead, Rocco led them downstream. Miles and miles through mud and fog. They nearly drowned crossing a shallow ford. Rocco's limbs shook from the freezing current. Luma clung to his scruff, feathers soaked. They collapsed on the far side, barely alive, but alive. Then came the forest, endless, cold, beautiful in its own way. Pines whispered to each other in the wind. Deer watched from afar. Silence reigned. They walked for what felt like weeks. Rocco's limp became more pronounced, a result of an old injury worsened by the journey. Luma flew more often now, scouting ahead, always returning to guide him. And one morning, deep in the stillness of that forest, Rocco stopped. He sniffed the air. Bread. Smoke. Not from bombs, but from chimneys. Voices. Not angry commands, but laughter. Luma swooped down, circling above him. Ahead, through the trees, houses, children, safety, after nearly 2,000 kilometers. The village they'd found at the forest's edge was only a brief breath of peace, not safety. Soldiers passed through often. Refugees swelled its capacity. Resources were scarce. Foreign volunteers handed out bread, but there were rules, lines, IDs. Rocco and Luma didn't fit anywhere. They left before sunrise, slipping past fences and watchtowers, heading west again. Now began the hardest stretch of all. The land turned wild. Gone were the barns and train tracks. Ahead stretched hills covered in snow, valleys frozen in silence. The air stung with cold. The trees groaned under the weight of winter, and yet they walked. Rocco's body had grown thinner, bones beginning to press against his skin. His back paws bled from frostbite. His ribs heaved with each breath. Luma's feathers dulled, her voice hoarse from the cold, her eyes dimmed from hunger. But still, they moved, not quickly, not easily, but forward. They crossed a frozen lake, inch by inch. Rocco's breath clouded in the air. Luma rode atop his head, wings tucked tightly against her body. The ice creaked beneath them like some ancient beast waking beneath their feet. Halfway across, it cracked. Rocco froze. A spider web of fractures raced out beneath him. He didn't move, not a muscle, while the world beneath him threatened to swallow them whole. Luma hopped down and perched on the ice ahead, as if to say, "Here, step here." Slowly, carefully, Rocco followed her lead, placing each paw where she indicated. They made it across. The ice held, barely. They collapsed on the far bank, shaking, not from cold, but from how close death had come. That night, there was no food, no shelter, only each other. Rocco curled into a tight circle. Luma pressed against his neck. The wind howled. Snow buried their bodies halfway by morning, but they survived. Days blurred into nights. Time lost meaning. They scavenged where they could. Trash heaps, abandoned homes, forgotten backpacks. Luma once found a crust of bread inside a broken helmet. Rocco chased and caught a squirrel. The only time he ever killed. He didn't eat much. He left most of it for her. One afternoon, they found a train derailed in the snow. Inside one of the cars, silence. Dust, but food, cans, biscuits, a miracle. They stayed there 3 days, resting, healing, warming their bodies under old blankets. Rocco barked softly in his sleep, legs twitching, dreams of running, of past lives. Luma sang again, not her full song, just parts, fragments, but enough to lift the air. Rocco listened, eyes closed. That was the first time he wagged his tail since the war began. Then came the wolves. It was night. They were deep in the forest, following a narrow trail. Luma flew ahead, alert. She didn't see them. She heard them first. Low growls. Footsteps in the snow. Rocco stiffened. 3 of them. Gray, lean, hungry. Rocco growled back, low and steady. He stepped in front of Luma, fur bristling. He had no chance of winning, but he didn't run. The wolves circled. Luma flapped above him, screeching, trying to distract. One lunged. Rocco met it mid-air. Teeth, blood. Snow churned into chaos. The others backed off. The injured wolf limped away, bleeding. The rest followed, unwilling to risk it. Silence returned. Rocco collapsed. Luma landed beside him, frantic. She pecked at his fur, searching for wounds. His side was gashed, but not deep. He was breathing, barely. She didn't sleep that night. She stayed awake on a branch above him, keeping watch. They walked slower after that. Rocco limped. Luma barely flew, but they were close. They could feel it. Each village they passed became less tense. The people spoke different words. The faces were softer. No uniforms, no checkpoints. At the edge of a city, they were spotted by a boy and his father. The boy gasped, pointing. "Papa, look! The bird's riding the dog!" The man stared, stunned. He knelt, arms open, but Rocco backed away. Luma fluttered nervously. Not yet. They weren't ready. Not here. They kept going. And then, one final field. Spring was beginning to thaw the frost. Wildflowers pushed through the earth. Bees buzzed, clumsy from sleep. The air smelled different, less like smoke, more like soil. Rocco stopped at the top of a hill. Below, a refugee camp stretched out. Rows of white tents, people walking, children playing. Luma hovered above, circling once, twice, then landed on his back. They watched together, and for the first time since Novel, there were no sirens, no gunfire, just wind. And the quiet sound of life beginning again. The refugee camp at the base of the hill was organized chaos. Tents flapping in the breeze, cardboard signs with names written in different languages, volunteers in bright vests calling instructions, handing out food, bandaging wounds. As Rocco and Luma stepped cautiously into this world, all eyes turned toward them. Children laughed and pointed. "Look, the dog has a bird." A group gathered quickly, some curious, others cautious. A man tried to approach with a piece of bread in one hand and a leash in the other. Rocco growled, low and warning. Luma ruffled her feathers, puffing up. They had come too far to trust easily. A woman knelt slowly, whispering in a language they didn't understand. She held out water in a shallow bowl. Rocco sniffed. Clean. Safe. He drank. Luma fluttered down and sipped too, cautiously. For the first time, they allowed themselves a moment of rest. That night, volunteers gave Rocco a blanket. Luma slept nestled against his ear. Around them, the camp buzzed with stories of escape, of grief, of impossible survival. But Rocco and Luma's story was stranger than most. People tried to help. They brought dog food, tried to check Rocco's injured leg. A vet offered to examine him. Rocco refused to be touched. Luma hissed when anyone came too close. So they stayed at the edge of the camp, on their own, as they had always been. One morning, a man arrived with a camera. He crouched low, taking photos. A dog and a bird. They came here together? The story spread. Some called it a miracle. Others, a symbol of peace. A child painted them on the side of a tent, Rocco with his tongue out, Luma on his back, wings wide. But not everyone believed. "They're animals," someone scoffed. "The bird just followed the dog for food." "You should separate them," said another. "Rehabilitate them properly." They didn't understand. This was not chance. This was loyalty. This was survival woven into a bond stronger than instinct. An aid worker named Elena tried her best. She approached slowly, offering meat and kind words. Rocco allowed her near. Over days, she earned their trust. She never reached too quickly, never forced. She sat near them in silence, letting them decide. One evening, she brought 2 bowls, one for Rocco, one for Luma. She smiled when they ate side by side, eyes darting, bodies still tense but grateful. They should be adopted, she told her colleagues, but together. That's impossible, they said. There are protocols. The dog goes to an animal shelter. The bird needs a wildlife specialist. Elena looked at Rocco, then at Luma. She knew. Separating them would be a second war. And yet, the day came. 2 vans, 2 adoption families. One for a mid-sized dog with survival instincts. Another for a rare cockatiel with unusual intelligence. Elena tried to argue, pleaded, but the system moved forward. The boy who would adopt Rocco knelt beside him, offering a leash with a trembling hand. Rocco hesitated. Luma circled above, frantic. She landed on Rocco's back, screeching, refused to move. Volunteers watched, stunned. The driver of the bird transport stepped forward, impatient. "She has to come with us. We have a scheduled stop." Elena crouched, her voice breaking. "They've come thousands of kilometers together. You cannot tear them apart now." The bird handler reached for Luma. Rocco snapped. Not to bite, but to warn. The message was clear. Not without her. Luma chirped rapidly, hopping in place. She looked at Rocco. He looked back, and something unspoken passed between them. A decision. Luma spread her wings and flew. Not away, not up, but gently toward the bird handler. She landed on his shoulder, still watching Rocco. A goodbye. Rocco didn't bark. He didn't move. But his eyes followed her until the van disappeared down the road. Then he turned and stepped toward the boy with the leash. He didn't wag his tail. He didn't resist. He just walked. That night, Luma sat in a warm, sunlit room filled with other rescued birds. But she didn't sing. Not yet. Across the country, Rocco lay on a rug beside a fireplace, fed and safe. But he didn't rest easily. Not yet. They had made it. They had survived. But now, they were apart. And though the war was behind them, the ache of separation had just begun. The house where Rocco now lived was small, warm, and nothing like the world he had come from. There was a garden out back, a girl named Sophia who spoke softly, and a fireplace that crackled in the evenings. He had a soft bed, bowls filled twice a day, and more toys than he knew what to do with. He was safe, but safety, he learned, was not the same as peace. He missed the silence of the forest, the rhythmic thump of wings behind his ears. He missed the light flutter of claws on his back, the way the world felt slightly more bearable with a feathered heartbeat pressed against him. At night, he would stare out the window, not barking, not pacing, just watching, as if expecting a small shadow to appear in the moonlight. Sophia's parents said he was adjusting well, but Sophia knew better. She sat beside him once, her fingers in his fur, and whispered, You're waiting for someone, aren't you? Rocco closed his eyes, not to sleep, to remember. In a rescue aviary by the coast, Luma perched near a window with a view of the sea. The room smelled of pine and lavender. Other birds chirped, flitted from perch to perch, groomed their feathers in hanging mirrors. But Luma stayed near the glass. She didn't sing. Not yet. Her new caretaker, a retired teacher named Irina, noticed. She watches like she's guarding something, Irina told a friend, but I don't know what. Some days, Luma would fly short circles, land on Irina's shoulder, and whistle a soft, broken note. It wasn't imitation, it was memory. A song only she knew. At dusk, when shadows stretched across the floor and the sea turned silver, she'd puff up her feathers, close her eyes, and lean slightly forward, listening to something only she could hear. One morning, Sophia played a song on her phone, a folk tune, soft and slow, a memory from her grandmother's village. Rocco's ears perked up. Then he stood, walked toward the speaker, sat down, and howled. Not a long, wild howl, but a low, aching sound that cracked halfway through, like it had been buried for too long. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know why. She only knew that, for the first time since they brought him home, he was speaking. That same evening, miles away, Luma sang. Just a few notes. The same folk tune. A whisper of it. Enough for Irina to stop, mid-step, heart skipping. She'd never heard the birds sing before. She didn't understand the melody, but it tugged at her. Something ancient and sorrowful and beautiful all at once. Who taught you that? She asked softly. Luma tilted her head, but she didn't sing again. Not yet. Days turned into weeks. Rocco began to settle. He followed Sophia around the house, waited by the door when she went to school, wagged his tail a little when she returned. At night, he still stared out the window, but he stopped whimpering. He began to trust the silence, not as an enemy, but as a companion, as something that carried echoes, not emptiness. Luma, too, changed. She flew more often now, accepted food from Irina's hand, landed on the piano and tapped the keys with her beak. She still didn't mimic like the others, but every now and then she'd pause, look toward the horizon, and whistle one long note, soft, steady, like a promise. No one knew their full story, not Sophia, not Irina, not the volunteers or the strangers who'd once tried to separate them. Only Rocco and Luma understood. What it meant to be two souls tethered by survival, by fear, by love, and then set apart by a world that could never quite understand. But they carried each other still, in the way Rocco paused at every breeze, in the way Luma turned her head toward the sound of distant barking. They were no longer together, but neither of them was truly alone. Because love, real love, does not vanish when parted. It transforms, it waits, it listens. And sometimes, on quiet nights when the world feels still, it sings spring, returned slowly, like a hesitant guest. In the seaside aviary, the windows were left open during the warmest hours. The ocean wind drifted in, salty and sharp, carrying scents of fish, rain, distant fields. Luma stood near the ledge, crest high, wings slightly open. She was stronger now. Her feathers had regained their shine. Her song, still rare, had become richer, fuller. Irina watched from the doorway. She's healing, she said softly to herself. But something in her voice hesitated, because healing didn't always mean forgetting. That morning, Irina wrote to a friend, an animal rescuer she knew inland. Do you remember that story about the dog and the bird from Novel? I've been thinking about it again. about the bond we couldn't explain. She didn't expect a reply, but one came that evening. It was brief. "I think I know the dog." Attached was a photograph. Rocco, sitting on a hill, a little girl beside him. Behind them, a garden in bloom. Irina stared at the image. Luma, on her perch, was whistling that same old tune, the one no one taught her. Hundreds of kilometers away, Sophia sat on her porch, brushing Rocco's fur. He had grown used to this life, routine, quiet, full of kindness. But some part of him still paused at every chirp, at the sound of wings, at the wind when it changed direction. Sophia's phone buzzed. She opened a message from a rescue network she followed. "A bird," they said, "a special one. We believe she shared a bond with a dog who came through our camp months ago. We wanted you to know." There was a video, just a few seconds, a cockatiel by the window, looking out. Then, a song. Soft, familiar. Sophia's hand went to her mouth. She turned the screen toward Rocco. He lifted his head, watched, listened. The moment the melody played, his ears perked. His eyes widened. And then, without warning, he stood, walked to the door, sat, waiting. Sophia didn't speak. She sat beside him, heart aching, because she understood. Somehow she understood. The idea was impossible. A reunion across countries, borders, bureaucracies. The families said no. The shelters said no. But Irina and Sophia, they said yes. They wrote. They pushed. They called every number. "We are not asking for forever," Irina said. "Just a visit." 3 weeks later, a van pulled into Sophia's town. Irina stepped out carrying a travel crate. Inside, silent but alert, Luma. Rocco stood frozen at the gate. He didn't run, didn't bark, just watched. Irina opened the crate slowly. Luma hopped out, disoriented. Then she saw him, and the world held its breath. She flew, not high, not far, just enough. Enough to land gently on Rocco's back. Her claws curled into his fur. He turned his head. They stayed that way, unmoving, for almost a minute. Then Rocco let out a sound no one had ever heard from him before. Not a bark, not a growl, but something like a sigh, a sound of release, of recognition, of home. They stayed together for 3 days, in the garden, by the fire, at the window. Rocco's tail wagged more, Luma sang more, but they were older now, changed. The war was behind them, their journey complete. On the 4th morning, Irina came to the door. Rocco walked Luma to the gate. He didn't stop her. She didn't cry. They looked at each other one last time, and Luma flew, not away from him, but toward herself, toward peace. Years passed. Rocco aged gently, his muzzle turned gray. He walked slower, rested more. But every spring, he'd sit beneath the cherry tree in Sophia's garden and lift his head, as if waiting for a sound, as if remembering wings. Sophia would sit beside him and hum the tune he loved, and his eyes would close, not from sadness, but from memory. In the aviary, Luma became a legend. She taught other birds her song. She flew to the same window every dusk. Irina swore she watched the sea, but not for the ships. "She listens for something," Irina said, "something only she knows." And one quiet morning, long after the world had changed again, Irina found Luma perched, still and peaceful. Her wings slightly open, facing the sun, as if waiting for someone to arrive, or as if she had already seen him coming. Love, real love, doesn't always end with reunion. Sometimes it ends with the knowledge that you found each other, that you saved each other, that somewhere in the world, your heart still beats in another body. Even after the journey ends, Even after the war is over, even after goodbye, it echoes forever.